All right. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to take a moment to introduce you to StageSource's new programs manager, Rosalind Bevan. Rosalind, say hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Roz Bevan, she, her pronouns. Thank you all. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so thankful to you for taking on this position. Cannot wait to get started and get some really cool things back up and running. So for today, getting started, hang on a second, let me just move my screen over. So first up, we'd like to talk to Arlekin players. Igor, can you unmute yourself, wave your hand, say hey?
Hey guys.
Hey. So we're just a little framing of this conversation for those of you that joined us last week. Kara was speaking to us and sort of just saying that audiences, while they appreciate this plethora of digital content, that nothing, right, is like live theater. And while I think there's nobody on this Zoom that wouldn't agree with that, we have seen some organizations that have had some really great success in creating things that feel inherently theatrical in the digital realm, and people who are doing some new things and playing with the form. And it was one of the conversations that we had early on with Ramona from HowlRound, just talking about we have to find new ways of making art right now. So what are those? And what I really love about this is now that we are, 4 months in, we've had some people who have really been able to sort of test this theory and work some things out. I had the pleasure of seeing Arlekin's piece, and I imagine many of you have as well. And if you haven't, you still have time, right, Igor?
Yes, there is one more free performance on the 12th, this coming Sunday. So yes, there's still chance.
Excellent. So we'll start with you, Igor, and then Hannah, we will talk to you. But so let's talk about the trial. Igor, would you like to share your trailer first or give a little
Sure,
context?
Yeah, I'll give just a little context. So this production, we while in pandemic at home, we decided to kind of remount or completely reimagine a past production of a one-woman show, and we did it with the help of Zoom. And so yeah, I'd love to show the trailer.
Great.
Just a second.
We're used to it.
Okay. So share screen.
Man, it was like I knew something was gonna happen. Natasha, you're the baddest damn chick on earth. Would you marry me? He's mine. He was mine. I had no intention of giving him away, and then she comes and won. And then Valera asks me, Natasha, what is your dream?
I hope you were able to hear and see everything. I don't know what it looked like on your side. So
it looked like
anyway,
a badass trailer, dude.
Okay, cool.
Dope.
So yeah, I just want to bring in a different perspective, and I think it's fair. And also, I want to try to inspire for us to capture this moment, and because this is a moment, and I think we as artists, what we do best is reflect on what's happening in the moment. And if there is such a need and there is such a desire to rethink what's happening right now, through the medium of virtual theater or sculpture or painting or whatever this is, maybe theater, maybe not, I don't know. And if there is a desire to do something like that, that you should do it, and don't stop yourself. And we've had more than 1,400 people come to see Natasha. Our budget was negative 15% that we were forecasting to close the season. We came in with a surplus. We are working on virtual national tour and international tour with this piece right now, where theaters are presenting, are going to be presenting this piece to their audience nationally and internationally. So I think, and I'm sorry, I always say that it's easy for me to be very blunt, because I can say I'm Russian and just like, it's so much easier. It works. And whether you like it or not, whether you think it's the same or different, the numbers don't lie. Of course, New York Times article helps, but numbers don't lie, and it works.
So can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean when you say the numbers don't lie, right? Is this...
So yeah.
Go ahead.
So we've had, again, 1,400, more than 1,400 participants, Zoom participants so far. And we're just starting. People out of a couple of hundred participants, each 200 to 300. Last time it was July 5th, so it was a little bit less than usual, about 200 participants. Maybe one or two leave during the session. So they stay and they interact.
Right.
And I'll talk more about why I think this approach works a little bit later. One of the things that the president of the board of Woolly Mammoth Theater said, and I think he formulated it in a beautiful way, is that he said it's a new door to the theater. For people that, there was a woman named Sarah that was speaking in one of the first shows, and she said, I don't go to the theater because A, it's expensive, B, you have to find parking, C, my wife and I, we have a child, and after everything is said and done, it's $200, $300 for us to go to the theater. And we recently went to a couple of shows. We spent this money and we didn't enjoy ourselves. And here I don't have a commitment, because I can close the computer, and I know that going in that I can close the computer anytime, or leave the meeting, leave the Zoom meeting anytime. And now I want to come and see your actual theater productions, because I understand the quality and I understand that I can make a commitment here now. So being a new door to,
yeah, I want to just sort of jump in and I guess reinforce that frame that there's an opportunity here to use this as a way to bring people in. It is not a replacement for the theatrical experience necessarily, Correct. But there are some things that are inherently theatrical. But like, this is a great sort of low cost, as we are trying to figure out how to create art and what we're doing. Like, this is an opportunity to pull in some new folks. And I think what I'd love to do, I want to ask you a couple of questions, right?
Sure.
You talked about this as a remount, right? That you sort of reimagined a piece that you had already done. And I think it's working beautifully. What's unique about this? What were the translations that you sort of made between the live and the video?
So it's a completely different show. I mean, so the most important thing in approaching this type of virtual theater, and I think we're just scratching the surface, right. Is that when you approach virtual theater, any type of virtual theater, it's very important to figure out the role of the audience. Otherwise, you're competing with the movie. You should not be competing with, this is theater. Theater means it's live. Theater means there's some sort of exchange. With virtual, it's very difficult to get that energy exchange, right? So, and it's very difficult, it's more difficult to keep the attention of the audience member. So it's very important to understand what is the role of the audience member. Why are they needed? They have to be needed. In this specific situation, we changed that the audience members are a jury, and each vote counts, and their experience, their life experience, and their dreams may be somehow incorporated into this, so that they feel that they're needed. They have a part to play in whatever this live interaction is. So that's very important, and that's I think number one reason why some Zoom performances don't work, because they're trying to compete with the movie. If it's pre-recorded and people understand that it's pre-recorded, then why not watch Netflix? Except for the fact that you like the person that's on stage, but that's not very scalable.
So let's talk a little bit about this live piece, because I know you get this question often, right? Is this live or is this recorded? How are you doing all of this stuff live as you're doing it? So you can talk a little bit about that process.
So there's it's very, that's a great question. It's very important to make it understandable to the audience members that it is live. And because it's only one actor that's on stage, there's two cameras, one actor. We have, for example, current time that's being displayed on the screen. We at some point, for example, if you're in speaker mode right now, there is a way to change. What I can do is I can get your I can get the screen, change it to gallery view, and display it back to you. So without you touching anything, you would see yourself and other participants in gallery view. And then when an actor, for example, asks Don, do you have a dream? John, do you have a dream? Rosalind, do you have a dream? Amy, you're writing something. Do you have a dream? And Amy has a reaction to that. And I see, I'm getting them to respond to me, to be on my side, and getting them involved. And that's live. That can't be pre-recorded. So there's a bunch of different ways of how we do that. I haven't really been getting a lot of questions. Is it lately? Is it live or not? Because we've been developing it, and we've been adding these little things. I don't think Don, when you were there, we had that effect. We've added it later. Nice. But there's different ways of incorporating the audience. The audience could be God. The audience could be a partner of some sort. But it's very important to incorporate. The other thing that's really important is not to pretend that you're in a theater. Like this, and me talking and pretending that I'm in a theater doesn't really work. You just like going into a space and really trying, as a director, and really trying to utilize this space to its best capacity, to its best capabilities, to make the best use of it. That's the same approach to doing these types of virtual performances. This is a virtual space, and so how can we use it? Because if we're in a 30-seat black box and kind of acting big, it's going to look weird. So don't pretend that you're in a big theater. See where you are. So that's also very important. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really beautiful about this particular piece is that it has created an environment that we can all sort of buy into. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to create this environment?
Can you explain a little bit? What do you mean?
Right, like we feel like we are in the cell with this person, right? Like we feel the isolation, and yet we also are able to feel that she sees us, that we see her, that I don't feel like I am watching a bunch of folks in their living room doing a reading.
So yeah, actually, for people that have seen it, I'm actually sitting behind me is the set for it, except for this couch. This couch leaves, but otherwise it's happening right here. This is the corner, which you just saw in the and she's writing on these walls. So we found a blank space. What we're using is about a 6 by 4 feet space where everything is happening. I borrowed some really cheap lights from a friend of mine to plug in here, and we have 2 cameras, and that's all. That's all. And her incorporate. What I mean about incorporating the space into the production is we're incorporating. So she's in a white cell. So how can we use it? White wall. And the idea of this production is that her imagination is becoming. It's a lucid imagination that she draws something and we see it and it becomes alive. She draws a faucet and hearts start falling out of it, and so forth. So white wall is perfect for that. We didn't have to repaint our walls. So kind of using what we have.
Right. Potentially really easy question, but how are you tackling rehearsals for this? How are you tackling the rehearsals, not just with the human, but with all of the sort of digital and effects work that you do? How did you put it together?
Well, I have access to the human. We happen to live together.
There you go. Problem solved.
Right. But there are ways. I was doing scenes with my first year at Boston Conservatory, and we were doing Chekhov scenes. And I hope none of my actors are here from the Seagull. I did the Seagull in the fall, and I kid you not, one of the scenes that we did with first-year students on Zoom, it worked much better than the one that I directed in a physical space with professional actors. I can go into that a little bit more if we have time, but it does work. Again, the main thing is using Zoom as Zoom. So why would characters be talking to each other via Zoom? Theatrical conventions don't work. It has to be a little bit more linear in terms of where these characters are for some reason talking on Zoom, and that's what was used in the scene in the Seagull, and it worked better than the actual production that I did, which I was really happy about. But
and I think my last question before we move on to Hannah, although I hope that you will stay so if people have other questions as we go. What, and can you even answer this yet, what do you think you will borrow from this digital realm and use to either enhance what you do in the future when we return to live, or supplement that? Do you have a sense?
So yes. So I think what I will borrow is this medium to attract new audience, and it has worked. The amount of new audience that we've attracted is incredible. We have audience. There has been, I think, eight countries that have seen this show. People from 8 countries, people from all over the world are tuning in. From Egypt, from Australia, from China, are tuning in to see the show. So that's something that's here to stay, and we're going to continue working on it. We're going to build, hopefully, a laboratory to continue this research work. And we're also going to be doing some workshops. We've gotten a lot of requests for workshops on explaining how this backend works, and I'm going to go into that. And we're building some of these workshops right now, and we're going to be announcing them soon. So what I'm going to borrow is the medium. It's going to stay. It's going to stay, and we're going to develop it further. I think we're just scratching the surface. But I think mostly I'm bringing my theatrical approach to theater into this medium, and it happens to work.
All right, I lied. I have one other question. It feels very inside the actor's studio, but bear with me. Why do you think this took off? What do you think it is about this piece? Like, everybody's been doing so much stuff. Why this?
Well, I think it has to do with some of the things that I've already mentioned, where the audience is needed. I think some of the effects are unexpected, I would say. I think the actor is doing a great job. And I also think it's very timely. It deals with it deals with systems failing young people, and how timely is that?
Very. Hey, Roz, do we have any questions in the comments?
Yeah, we have one question here. How did other countries learn about the project?
It's through New York Times. It's all through New York Times. We had a big article in New York Times where the critics pick, and so that's how they learned. So we're now in conversation with different theaters around the world to present it to their audience.
Mm-hmm. Great. Roz, anything else?
No, looks like that's all we have in the chat.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for letting me share my perspective.
Stay on, don't go anywhere, as we may have more questions. I mean, if you can, live your life, make your choices. Hannah. Hey, Hannah, can you raise your hand, wave out? Hi, Hannah. Hannah, let's just lay it out there. Hannah also works with John and Gina, who Gina is masked on a newish project. Can we say newish? Sparkhaven?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome.
We can say that.
So Hannah, a couple things. Would you, one, tell us about Sparkhaven, tell us about the genesis of this, and then we'd love to hear about like the grant that you all just got to do some really amazing work, and maybe if you want to put, and my apologies if I am abbreviating this wrong, but like Summer Camp and Nosferatu, two really incredible sort of projects, but I'd love to have you talk about both of them if possible.
Sure. So I'm Hannah Pryfogle, she, her. I'm the producing artistic director of Sparkhaven Theater, which started back in August when we were residents at Chelsea Theater Works for the year for our project of Nosferatu, which we did a workshop of it on Halloween 2018. So it's been a long journey for this play, and we were very excited to produce it live. Sparkhaven, we are very committed to working with playwrights on their work. So we say that, you know, what a project is not any one person's work. We're all doing it together. So that's something of importance to us in creating new work. And also we do a lot with music, which I can talk about a little bit later. But as far as Nosferatu, how that all went down, we stopped rehearsals right before Tech Week, which was devastating, as it was for all of us. And a couple weeks later, we were approached by our marketing director, who was in conversations with HowlRound about streaming readings, and wanted to know if we were interested. And my gut reaction was absolutely not. I don't want to present something that's not a good representation of all the work we did. And we had all this choreography that we can't show in a Zoom environment. But then I was talking to my collaborators who really would have loved to have something be represented online that they can share with other people in their portfolios. Mm-hmm. And I think that is incredibly important as artists who don't have a lot of work on the internet. It's a really cool way for applications, and that was how we were able to really interact with the grant as well. On Nosferatu, we did a live stream on April 30th, which feels like a million years ago, all with the same cast. We had over 700 views across the nation. There was one person in Germany that watched, so that was exciting.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the HowlRound platform helped with that?
Absolutely. Right. HowlRound having an international mission and marketing to the entire world
Mhm.
is something we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Right. I think I also like the framing of like using this, right? What are the opportunities? How are we not just continuing to create work, but like helping folks to get out there in this time when things are kind of I'll say a little stagnant, but we're moving around. So I think that's an incredible, that's a great way to frame it. So then talking about, right, like you had this piece with Nosferatu that you were trying to extend the life of. And one of the things I really liked about that production was just, right, like everybody, it felt like, knew how to use their own personal sort of Zoom room to really interact with each other, so that you could almost feel that they were in a space together and not sort of these little squares that we're doing, which I think was a thing that we're all sort of slowly learning as we work through this medium. But what I'd love to talk about, because your new piece is a serial theater, which like, yes, so fantastic. So can you talk a little bit about the idea behind that? What you think is inherently theatrical about it? What can we expect, and how are you working on it? All the questions.
All the questions.
All the questions.
Camp Strangewood is something we're really, really excited about. We have over 40 artists working on this piece. It is a 6-week series of horror stories, all told at the same camp, that are all kind of intertwined, but they also stand on their own. But it's Sunday nights at 8 for the whole summer. Very easy to remember.
Mhm.
So we were interested in telling a story over the course of a long time, and something I've loved is that that's a very summer thing on TV. There are always mini series that are really exciting because you get this big story, but you get it over multiple weeks. So we wanted to do live performances once a week so that people had something exciting to look forward to. Sunday nights, Game of Thrones at 9, Sparkhaven at 8. So we're doing 30-minute episodes. Each play has a different playwright and a different director, and 5 to 6 actors as well. And they are all over the country, and that's something really exciting to us, that all of these artists we met in Boston. So these artists are either still in Boston or they've moved away, but that's something we all grew up as collaborators together.
Mhm.
So having the opportunity to connect again with artists that we haven't been able to work with in a long time was something.
It's a really cool opportunity that I think the platform affords. I'm wondering, for those folks that are sort of not in Boston, have you found a way to, let's say, capitalize on their new networks? Again, how do you spread audience? How do you get this work out to folks who are outside of our local sphere? Have you guys thought or talked about that at all? Do you have any, I don't know, metrics on that?
We don't. I think we're still working through it, but that's next.
Great.
Yeah. As far as the grant goes, we received the Transformative Public Art Grant from the city of Boston, which covers about 50% of our budget for paying all of our artists. And we really focused in our application that this is something for the Boston community, that all of these artists intersect in Boston. And something that we were really diligent about when we were putting together teams and casting and reaching out to people is we wanted to create teams where most of the people did not know each other, because there's an opportunity there for artists that are in the same city who have not met. We can still build our network, even though we can't go to different events in different places throughout the city. We can still connect with other people.
So right back to the question of what makes this experience, what's the theatricality about it? What connects it a little bit to like the thing that we know and love?
I think the live aspect is a major part of it. It's not edited in any way. We also bring in a lot of different production elements. So it's not just a reading. There are moments of puppetry. There's moments of different lighting elements, which, side note, as a director, I have learned to give up control a lot in a rehearsal environment because I'm solely relying on what's in an actor's room and what tools they have. So that's a conversation that I start very early in the rehearsal process. But we also incorporate video and live music as much as we can. Alyssa Voth, who is our resident music director and composer, she has put together some incredible arrangements for Nosferatu and for Strangewood. I was just talking to her about our theme song, which is very exciting. But gathering musicians from across Boston to record things, but also figuring out how can we create live music when it's nearly impossible. We've discovered that bringing two different sound elements from two different locations, they're never able to sync up. But how are we able to bring in sound from one location? And what does that look like in a virtual environment? So I think on that level, we're constantly creating in the same way that we do in physical theater. I strongly believe that theater at its core, our mission is to respond and create in response to the world around us. And if we're not doing it right now, what are we doing? I think it's crucial that if we want to stay connected to our communities, we have to keep creating. And so that's why we're working specifically with playwrights who are developing new work for Zoom, so that it's something that's relevant to the moment, but it's live, it's growing, and it's something organic that is something really exciting. Yeah.
One of the things that I find incredibly encouraging when I go to your website and look at the artists that you have amassed, right? It is a huge mix of like intersectionality and experiences. And I would love to know how you are thinking about, right, marketing to those individual communities. Marketing feels like a really terrible word right now. I don't know why. Like, how are you outreaching? How are you engaging with all of the various communities, so that folks know that there is a place for them here, that these stories, right, it's not just one experience, but like, especially in this time, right, where that kind of work is so important. How are you getting that word out?
Yeah. This is something really important to us, as we know, a lot of artists that don't get work in the city and then they move away.
Right.
I had the pleasure last year of seeing a reading of Haley Spivey's play Birch Prep 5, which just had a virtual reading with Homesick Play Project, which I really recommend. It's still online. It's an incredible piece, and it has most, if not all, of the original actors. And it was a turning point for me when I saw that, because it was incredible. And most of the actors were leaving Boston because they could not get work here. And those were actors of color. And then it became my mission, and Sparkhaven's mission, and conversations we're constantly having is that most of us have worked in the fringe community with artists that aren't, they're not able to sustain themselves on working solely in theater in Boston, and then they move away. So how do we keep people here? And how do we engage artists that we know and love? They're out there, they're just not being hired. So this virtual experience allows us to go to the actors that we love and the artists that we love. The title of Haley's play is Birch Prep 5, BIRCH. There was a question in the Zoom, and I thought,
you're great.
Anyway,
Doing great.
Yeah, the virtual theater allows us to connect with the artists that we know that have moved away. Again, it's all the artists are there. They're working on the fringe level because that's what they're getting, and because they're wonderful people. So they just need to be hired.
Yeah, we've all got to start somewhere, right? So for this next project, the first performance goes up this coming Sunday?
No, July 19th.
July
So
19th.
3 weeks.
And I know in the email I linked everybody to your page, but if you'd like to link to it again in the chat so that people can check it out, that would be great. Friends, folks online, any questions, thoughts that you want to put out into the air, work that you're all doing or work that you are seeing in this new sort of Zoom realm? Or is anybody considering a platform that is not Zoom that we should talk about? I know earlier in a conversation, Josh at Improv Boston talked about a couple of other platforms that they were looking at, specifically sort of gamer related platforms. But curious as to if anyone is doing work outside of Zoom. No, Don, we're not doing a damn thing.
Really
Thank you, John
quickly.
Meredith, please.
We also, for Camp Strangewood, are doing one mini-sode that's just going to be a short one-person play, and we're going to do that on Instagram Live, which I think is really exciting because it sort of just appears. Like a lot of people, if you're following us, you'll just get an alert, or you could be going through Instagram stories and you'll just come across a short play in your Instagram feed. So it's sort of like guerrilla theater in that way, in that it just appears and it's easy to access. Most people, at least in their 20s, have an Instagram, and you may not be searching for theater, but it'll certainly come up. And then I've been looking a lot into Twitch and how gamers who stream their games have been working with free resources like OBS, which allows you to stream multiple screens and add effects. And I think there's a lot of things that the gaming community has been doing that's exciting, and that we can learn from them of how to amp up the stakes and bring in new effects and technologies in virtual theater.
For the Instagram piece that you're doing, are you just going through the Instagram platform, or are you using something like Zoom or just a video that you are then uploading? Or is it just, I have my phone and we're doing this thing?
I believe our plan is I have my phone and we're doing this thing.
Right.
And we're sort of leaning into that of, I'm forgetting the movie. Blair Witch Project, there we go. So it's her giving her own account and going on Zoom. So it's very much aware of the medium that it's on. It is a young girl at summer camp going on Instagram Live, and we are watching it.
Nice. I don't know if either Hannah or Igor, you can talk a little bit about this, but how have you monetized any of your projects? Or is that not the focus right now?
Well, we, if I may, so as I said, our budget has gained, and we ended with a surplus. So the way that we're doing it is they're filling out the audience members are filling out the reservation form, and then being asked for donations. And a lot of people give then, and then also after the show, a lot of people give after the show because they get a follow-up email. So it's all donation based, but it has worked. It has worked really well. I don't think we would have raised as much. I don't think we would have won if we were charging for tickets so far. the theaters that are going to be doing some work with us are going to be probably charging their patrons, but the donation system has worked well for us.
Excellent. Hannah?
Yeah, we are not super focused on monetizing right now. We're focused just on paying our artists. So we are relying on donations from our community at sparkhaventheater.com if people want to check that out. We're about halfway through our fundraising goal in under a week. So we're very grateful for our community.
Excellent. Peter DeMiro, if you're still on the line, can you talk to us a little bit about how you worked with ComTV and this crazy experience? What?
Hi everybody. Of course, my communications person knows much more detail, but she wanted. We talked about taking on the challenge of doing this festival when we have so many diverse clients. You know, kids to people in their 80s and 90s with different technical capacity. And went with Twitch as our main platform through the bid. So it was a lot of coordination, but I don't think we would do it again, all those platforms again. But I think she could probably answer which were more friendly. You do run into the danger, especially with YouTube and Facebook, I believe, that where you get shut down, the music rights are questioned, even though we put the disclaimer in our verbiage inside the thing. They'll shut it down and then they'll apologize later. And meanwhile, the person who only has Facebook has lost out, you know. And this is mostly with shorter performances in this festival and hour-long classes, but then we'd have like a 20-minute dance piece or something put in there. So if anybody wants to know more, please email me. I'll put that in there and connect you with our communications person. I think for the future, as we go into performance, we're thinking of a few live and then using one of these platforms to stream out, much for the same reasons I think Igor talked about, is that we could reach people who are not comfortable coming out yet, and we'll probably reach a much larger audience than sometimes the 12 people who might show up live into the theater. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for jumping in. All right, friends, if there are no more questions, I want to thank Igor, Hannah, and Peter for the jump in at the end, for sharing your experiences. I hope that as more people continue to traverse this new digital realm, as we see more success stories and more interesting configurations, that we can keep coming back to this conversation. I think just in hearing a lot of what we're hearing with the city and the state, and especially the news right now, a second wave feels possible. I hate to be that person to say it. So how are we prepping for that, right? And how are we melding the live and the digital so that we can sort of extend the life of our work, keep creating meaningful work at this time? So happy to continue to bring things in and share sort of best practices with that. But if there is nothing else, then we will say goodbye. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful Tuesday.